I posted a video about a week ago ranking every single God of War, and one of the most frequent comments was talking about Ragnarok, whether if it was a masterpiece, whether it lived up to the hype, whether it was as good as 2018, whether it was a disaster, whatever it may be. But I think enough time has passed between Valhalla and Ragnarok releasing over a year ago, Valhalla releasing over a month ago. I think it's enough time to look at these games in hindsight after the hype has died down and give a solid review and answer the question whether Ragnarok lived up to its name or not. These are my opinions. Anyone who was around for the build-up of this game knows that it was unreal.
Oh my.
Like, it was insane. It was so fun, but there were just so many crazy rumors, theories, expectations, all because 2018 left some huge shoes to fill. I think that people were expecting Ragnarok to be a game that kind of expands on the combat, giving us new weapons, expands on the map, giving us more realms like Asgard and like just more rooms in the realms. And then the biggest thing was enemy variety, in my opinion, because they reused a troll like 100 times. And then more climactic boss fights like the final Baldur on the giant thing. That was crazy. I love that boss fight. And then also the dragon. As for the story, this was the biggest one. I think like they just had so much stuff to cram into this game. Atreus being Loki, Kratos' fate, Freya's vengeance, Tyr, Faye, who blew the horn, like how did Kratos get to Midgard, and then just like all the Greek throwbacks and all that stuff. Overall, I think people were expecting a game with solid combat and expanding the story, answering most of the questions 2018 left us with some more exploration to the map, which, with all of that said, that was not an easy task at all, considering they decided to make the game 2 games instead of 3, which I always say the Norse Saga probably should have been broken up into like God of War 2018, Fimbulwinter, Ragnarok, so that they could space it out and kind of take their time more, but I'm not a dev, so what do I know? The gameplay really didn't change in my opinion. The one thing I'm going to talk about off the bat is Atreus' gameplay. I think it was good. I really have no complaints about it. The levels that he was in really didn't do it service. I think we all know what I'm talking about. But I thought his actual gameplay mechanics and everything were fine. The one thing I didn't really like about it was the melee, hitting them with the bow and arrow got a little boring. But I think they have plans for him in the future, and they didn't want to give him a melee weapon off the bat because I personally think they're going to come out with an Atreus standalone game still, even after Valhalla. So yeah, Atreus was cool. Draupnir was really cool. Nice addition to the weapon arsenal. I think we all knew Kratos was gonna get another weapon, and I really didn't think it was gonna be Mjolnir. That's just, I don't know. I didn't see that happening. And then another little mechanic was the grappling mechanic, which it was only a matter of time till that got added because literally every PlayStation exclusive has one. Not a complaint. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just, it wasn't anything crazy. But overall, man, if you like the gameplay in 2018, you'll like it in Ragnarok. And I know a couple people, they don't like the camera, they don't like how you can't jump and da-da-da-da-da. There's a very, very small group of people that I think don't like the gameplay, but I think overall 99.9% of the people like the gameplay. Off the rip, man, I'm giving the gameplay a 10 out of 10. I love it. It's my favorite game ever. 2018 and Ragnarok, they're my favorite games ever. I'm a little biased, but I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10, bro. Alright, here we go. This is so hard to even talk about because I feel like I'm going to say stuff and then I'm going to look back and listen to this and be like, I don't know if I agree with that anymore. Or sometimes people comment something and I'm like, damn, I think they're right. And it changes my mind. But I'm going to try and describe this the best I can. I'm probably going to miss out on a lot of stuff. And I'm probably going to hit a lot of key points, but probably miss out on a lot of stuff because there really is just so much to talk about. This is definitely going to be the longest segment of the whole video. But before I dive into it, it's going to sound like a lot of bad things to say, but half of them are really just nitpicky things I've heard from other people that I just want to discuss. I mean, I just think that they're worth bringing up. The story has so much content that there's so many things just to talk about. All right, so The story started off with a bang, like fighting Atreus, who was actually a grizzly bear, showcasing like his new abilities as a god, seeing Faye, and then meeting Odin and Thor. For the first hour, these things happen, and then you got one of the best boss fights in the game, probably in my opinion, the best boss fight in the game. Then you go to rescue Tyr in the realm of the dwarfs, so that was really cool. And then after that, it all kind of spirals into like you create many alliances, and then some plot twists leading into a war with Asgard to shut down Odin. That's kind of my interpretation of the story. So I'm gonna go into some things that many people perceive as cons, which I don't agree with all, but they're worth mentioning, like I said. So let's start off with the pacing. I think the game had some crazy highs followed by some segments. I think this is just solely due to the fact that there were so many plot lines that had to unfold in the game. In my opinion, I heard this in another video and I have to agree, I think the pacing was honestly fine up until about when Tyr introduced himself as Odin. Because after that, everything moves so fast. Like, something that I always think about is like the light and dark elves formed an alliance after being in war for centuries. It felt like in like over a night. The game kind of covered it up by saying like Freya's brother Freyr was on good terms with them, so he could make something happen, but you'd still think after centuries of war they wouldn't just poof fight alongside each other. But I mean, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, so I guess it makes a little bit of sense. Then the actual event of Ragnarok itself, it just didn't really feel like a war. It was a very linear path. It wasn't really open, and it felt like it ended right after it started with really no consequence other than like the Midgardians dying and obviously Freyr dying. Another big thing too is what happened to Kratos' fate. It's almost like something that they totally forgot. You'd think after a big cliffhanger from 2018 where Kratos was perceived to die and Loki was going to hold him in his lap, there was never any fear that that was actually going to happen. Like, they never really teased that in Ragnarok. Like, there was never a point in Ragnarok where I was like, oh my god, Kratos might die, this is insane, the fate, it's gonna come true, other than when the Norns said, oh, you're gonna die. But like, I don't know, to me and to many others, I think that's not really enough to be like on the edge of your seat. That's my opinion on the pacing. I think the game did very well up until where we found out Tyr was Odin, and before that there were some segments, but nothing where I would like go crazy, lose my mind about, except, you know, no, I'm just joking. It wasn't that bad, but we'll talk about that in a sec. But anyway, I know I'm talking a lot about this, I'm sorry, but just to wrap everything up with the pacing, that's not to say I didn't love everything that happened after Odin was revealed as Tyr. I just think that since there were so many plot lines, they had to take a lot away from the actual climax, which was Ragnarok War. So the pacing really didn't even bother me until it started to age a little bit, and I kind of looked back and was kind of like, okay, I could see where people are coming from. But what actually kind of bothered me a little bit after I beat the game was it didn't answer a lot of questions. It kind of left even more questions, which isn't really a bad thing for the future of the games. But I just want to know, like, bro, who blew the horn? How did Kratos get to Midgard? First of all, how did Faye die? Like, she just died, like, natural causes, like, how? And then there's probably more I can't even think of right now, but yeah, there are some questions that need some answers, man. So let's bring up the elephant in the room real quick. Ironwood. Okay, like, look, I don't think Ironwood would have been that bad if they'd have just cut it in half and removed some of the parts and made it shorter. Like, fighting fighting Angraboda's grandmother was fine. It was actually cool. I liked it. I didn't mind it. But why did we need to pick berries and clear hives out of a cave for like an hour? It was just very fetch questy, which is not typical for God of War. I thought to myself, like, why didn't they just make these side quests or something like that? But then I realized Atreus leaves at the end of the game, so you couldn't have gone back for them after. So they should have just scrapped them, in my opinion, and then put all that time into Ragnarok. Alright, man, there's so much to talk about with this story. I'm just going to close it off with this. I really did love this story. I love the theme of this story, which is, you know, like, fate doesn't define you, and, you know, just because you love somebody, you cannot hold them too close or you'll push them away. You need to let people spread their wings, and I really do love the story. It is amazing. It had some moments where I was like, but it also had some moments where I was almost jumping out of my seat. So with all of that said, man, I know it sounds like I had a lot of bad to say, but I was kind of just ranting and also going over some nitpicky things I've heard on the internet. I'm going to give this story an 8 out of 10. If you want to bring it down a couple, I get it, but I'm biased. I love this game. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. I'm just going to start right off the bat with, I love the protagonists in this game. I love their dynamics, Kratos and Atreus' relationship, Kratos and Freya's relationship, Kratos and Mimir, Brock and Sindri, rest in peace Brock, and even Sindri's tragic story. I love it because it's a classic God of War ending, which is usually tragic. So I'm not really going to go into the protagonists, but what I do want to talk about are the antagonists. I love how the antagonists were written in this game. Heimdall, Odin, and Thor specifically. But starting off with Heimdall, he was arrogant and losing his mind a bit. I mean, you could tell his screw was a little bit loose, but who wouldn't go crazy if you couldn't see everyone's intentions and see who everybody really is? I mean, I could imagine he just sees humanity as like a selfish population that like disgusts him. I mean, that's my impression of him at least. But I loved the detail of Heimdall, I cannot talk, of Heimdall staring down a rageful Kratos and seeing just like a glimpse of who Kratos really was, and then ending with his last words being monster. Like, I thought, dude, that was just perfect. With all that said, his writing just made it super satisfying to kill him. But yeah, I thought his character was the perfect interpretation of somebody that sees who everybody really is and is just losing his mind. Then on to Thor, which was probably my favorite antagonist in the game, one of my favorite in the series. He just reminded me of like a young Kratos. He was born in a traumatic, dysfunctional family and then raised to be a monster, but then he's like blinded by all of his wrongdoings and all that stuff. Meanwhile, deep down, all he wants to do is change for his family, but he's just so traumatized from all the wrongdoings and all that abuse that he takes from Odin. The writing makes you want to kill him in the beginning, and then at the end being upset that he dies, like he was just getting started. So I think that just shows like how good his writing was. And then even though I don't think that's the last we'll see of Thor, because I do think he's going to the higher plane of existence since he kind of vaporized like Athena in God of War 2, I still think he was just getting started. And when he died, personally, I was like, damn, I felt like he was just getting started. And then lastly, I just want to talk about Odin. So I think Odin was the perfect sociopathic manipulator. If it wasn't for all the stories we've heard of Odin in the past, I think I would have even gotten fooled into thinking he was a good guy. His character was the epitome of blinded by knowledge. He was very intelligent and he would not stop at anything to gain more intelligence. He would even like convince himself that his actions were justified, and also not having any sympathy for anyone but himself, which at some points of the game, he honestly projects to Kratos, because I think deep down he does that. He does have that insecurity of how selfish he is.
What do you even know of godhood? In your lifetimes, has anyone ever worshipped you? Ever prayed to you? Can you even imagine that kind of love? No! You don't care about mortals. You don't care about anything beyond yourself, beyond the monster who kills without cause.
I even think Odin was wise enough to pick and choose his battles wisely. Like, for example, in the beginning of the game, I think people said that Odin was really insecure for telling Kratos pretty much to back off and don't seek trouble with him, and even going as far to make a deal with Kratos to avoid conflict. But in my eyes, I think that's just Odin acknowledging that Kratos is a threat and not blindly just going to attack him like other gods have tried to in the past. All in all, the antagonists in this game were written so well, and they all mashed together to make this perfect dysfunctional family drama dynamic, which I loved, and is super reminiscent of like older God of Wars in a way, kind of. I'm giving the characters in this game another 10 out of 10, which isn't a surprise because Sony Santa Monica Studios does not mess with their characters and their development throughout all the games. I'm going to keep this segment fairly short. As for the enemies, enemy variety was a big thing coming into Ragnarok, because in 2018, it was a big complaint that there wasn't enough enemy variety. But I'm just going to say, in Ragnarok, I think they hit the nail right on the head, and the enemy variety was great. It didn't feel like I was fighting the same thing over and over again. There was really like no troll bosses. It was just a variety of bosses and enemies, and it was great. I would also like to add that I enjoyed every single boss fight in this game. They were all very climactic. They were all very quick time event-y. I know that's not a word, But they really did feel like God of War boss battles. The only boss fight that I could really think about to make some critiques is Odin. Long story short, I think it was just really easy and he felt really weak. He didn't really feel like this all-father that everybody's been talking about since 2018. Granted, it was a 3-on-1, which I get, but I still think that this is a person who's imprisoned so many big figures like Tyr and all that stuff, and I feel like we just went in and took him out in a couple minutes. It just didn't feel like a grand finale. Another quick thing you could take in account is I think Odin is praised more for his knowledge and manipulation than his actual physical abilities. But again, I feel like this was supposed to be the grand finale, the All-Father, and it just felt way too easy, way too simple, and way too inconsequential. But other than that, I think really the bosses and enemy variety were great. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think a 9 out of 10 is a good place to put it. I think it could have been a 10 out of 10 if Odin was a bit more climactic. Off the rip, bro. The world is beautiful. I mean, the budget for this game was insane, so they had the resources to do it. My favorite part of the game, like world-wise, environment-wise, was that galaxy-looking place when we were starting Ragnarok. Bro, that was just gorgeous. Like, oh my god. And I still remember my first initial reaction of seeing the wall of Asgard and just being like, dude, this game is gorgeous. Honestly, this game is probably the most beautiful game I've ever played, like visually. The only game I feel like that comes close to it for me is Horizon, what was it called? Forbidden West. But this one just takes the cake because there's so, like, that galaxy looking place, Asgard. The way Asgard's sky turns like red during the actual War of Ragnarok, it was just so good. All the little details. And there's like 100 million more examples I could give, but I feel like it's not really worth the time to just keep talking and talking and talking about the world. Just know that I thought it was beautiful. Probably one of the best looking games I've ever played. I know I keep saying that a lot. I know I'm glazing this game, bro. I know I'm biased, whatever. But I love it. I thought the world was perfect. 10 out of 10. We're just going to move on past this one because we got more stuff to talk about. I remember the rumors circulating that Sony Santa Monica Studios was working on a DLC or a spin-off or something, and that they were going to announce the big news at the Game Awards. I was pretty 50-50 about it, maybe not even 50-50, but I just remember seeing Kratos come in on that boat, and oh my god, I jumped up off. I literally was jumping up and down like a kid during Christmas. And then the DLC itself just exceeded expectations. Like, nobody really knew, like, was it going to be a gameplay add-on, an epilogue to the story? Nobody really knew. And, you know, we got to get some crazy throwbacks. The Blade of Olympus, Helios, talking about his daughter, his wife. It was just, like, clarity of, like, okay, this is what Kratos is thinking. He's a very quiet character, so I feel like Valhalla was, like, telling the fans this is what he thinks of all of these things that happened throughout his life, and it was amazing. And then we get to find out that he's going to be the new God of War for Midgard, which I'm very curious about because I thought Ragnarok was the final game in Norse mythology, but it seems like they kind of changed their mind, but who knows what could happen next. Overall, Valhalla is exactly what I needed in order to hold me off for the next God of War installment, and it just was the icing on top of the cake for Ragnarok itself. I think Ragnarok itself had some cons, as we spoke about, but I think Valhalla came in with just an absolute bang, and it just overshadowed all those cons. I think it really redeemed a lot for me. It redeemed that excitement, the nostalgia of the old games, and kind of gave us a little bit of insight of what's going to happen in the future of the series. There's really a million things I could talk about with this game. I probably missed a ton, but that's really what Ragnarok is. It's so hard to cover everything because there's so much stuff to talk about. Not to mention, man, the tier boss fights, him having different types of weapons from different types of mythologies. They're definitely just throwing all of these mythologies in the air. I feel like at this point they know what they're doing, but they just keep teasing us like, oh, we could go Egyptian, we could go Aztec, we could go all this type of stuff. I don't know, man. It was really, really good, and it was exactly what I personally needed. Valhalla was a 10 out of 10, bro. It just, the DLC was so good. It's been over a month. The recency bias has died down, and I still feel the same way, and I just don't think I'm going to feel any differently in the future. Alright, so if you take all of my ratings into consideration, God of War Ragnarok comes out to about a 9 out of 10 in my opinion. I think before Valhalla, Ragnarok had some things that didn't really sit right with me, like the pacing, some anticlimactic scenes, and really that's all I could think of right now. But after Valhalla, it really just spun the whole thing on its head. We kind of have a direction of where some of the characters are going, some nice nostalgia, some amazing gameplay, awesome cutscenes, and then just some clarity about Kratos overall. So my point is this: although Valhalla didn't make up for some of the issues that were in Ragnarok, like the pacing, anticlimactic scenes, it really did add like a really unique twist to the game, and it was just an exciting gift in my opinion. There is nothing bad about Valhalla. Ragnarok has its flaws here and there, but it's still overall a great game. So for the verdict, did God of War Ragnarok live up to its name? In my opinion, yes, it did. I do think that this game is a masterpiece. It depends on who you ask. A lot of people will strongly disagree, a lot of people will strongly agree. That's the beauty about these things. We can all discuss them, tell each other how we feel, da 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 da. But that is everything. If you watched the whole thing or if you just kind of stuck around for some bits and pieces, I really appreciate it. But that is all I have for now. Thank you everybody. Peace.